Some friendships you can explain in a sentence. This one took me 50 years to understand. In our very first video on this channel, I mentioned this friendship briefly, just a few words, because I wasn't sure you were ready for it now. I think you are. Let's begin. (1932) New York City. The world was in an economic crisis, and in a small summer theater in Massachusetts, two young men were waiting for their turn. Both broke, neither with a name, yet both wanting the same thing, just one shot. Jimmy Stewart, from a small town in Pennsylvania, Princeton graduate, speaks politely, gets along with everyone. When he entered a room, he brought something with him, something pure, something sincere, something that made people smile without knowing why. Henry Fonda, on the other hand, had a very different temperament, coming from the stillness of Nebraska. More reserved, deeper, a quiet man, but when he walked into a room, you felt it. Not loudly, not dramatically, you simply felt it. It made them closer. These two men shared an apartment in New York, shared the same empty pockets, walked the same Broadway sidewalks in the same worn-out shoes, and when Hollywood called, they went together and moved in together again. Same city, new chapter, same two men. Now, here is where most people expect the story of two similar men who found each other. But that is not this story. Fonda was a ladies' man, married 5 times. Each marriage, its own storm. Jimmy Stewart, he would find one woman and stay married to her for 45 years. One restless, one steady, one searching, one arrived, and yet they could not stay apart. 1947. America was afraid, not of a person, not of a place, of an idea. And in Hollywood, that fear had a name. It had hearings, it had lists, it had the power to end careers overnight. Every person in that town had to choose a side. And one afternoon, in a room whose address no biographer has ever confirmed, Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda chose opposite sides, and they did it loudly. The exact words, no one knows. The biographies go quiet here. They say only that it was heated, that voices were raised, that something was said that couldn't easily be unsaid. I've thought about that afternoon many times. Two men who had shared everything, an apartment, a city, a dream, suddenly looking at each other like strangers. And then, one of them said something. Not an apology, not a surrender, something simpler, something wiser. "Let's make a deal," he said. "We never talk politics again. Not once, not ever." Silence, then a handshake. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, elections, wars, assassinations, the world changing around them every single decade. And these two men never once broke their word. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because what happened next is not what you'd expect. 1941. The world went to war, and Hollywood, the place built entirely on illusion, sent its most real men. It made them closer. Jimmy Stewart was at the peak of everything, an Oscar on his shelf, his name on every marquee, studios calling every morning. They told him he was too valuable to go. He told them there was something more valuable than him, and he flew. Real missions, real danger, real enemy aircraft in real European skies. He came back, but the man who came back was not entirely the same man who left. Fonda went to the Pacific. The Navy dot, both came home decorated. Both came home changed. But Jimmy couldn't sleep. The missions followed him into the dark. The sounds, the images, things a man sees at altitude that he can't simply leave up there. Today, we have a name for it. Back then, they just called it the cost of coming home. And here is what I find remarkable. Fonda never asked about it, never pushed, never said, "Talk to me. Tell me what happened up there." Showed up every time. Sometimes that is the whole thing, isn't it? Just showing up. Now, I want to slow down here, because this next part, this is the part I keep coming back to. Not the films, not the awards, not even the fights. This. For years, sometimes for weeks at a stretch, these two men would sit together in a garage, building model airplanes, painting them, sometimes flying kites in the yard outside, and they wouldn't talk. Hours would pass, Fonda painting, Jimmy adjusting the balance weights, the occasional murmur, the occasional laugh, then silence again. I've read everything written about these two men. Thinking about is that silence, because that garage wasn't just a hobby, it was a refuge from the cameras, from the contracts, from the noise of being famous in a town that never stops making noise. In that garage, they weren't Henry Fonda and James Stewart. They were just Hank and Jim. Two men, a workbench, and all the time in the world. Have you ever had someone like that? Someone you didn't need to perform for? Someone the silence felt safe with? If you have, then you already understand everything about this friendship. Here is something that will surprise you. To men, 50 years of friendship, the same industry, the same town, and yet they appeared on screen together only 4 times. For 1948. On Our Merry Way, 2 jazz musicians, young, loose, everything still ahead of them. You can feel it in every frame. These men are genuinely happy to be there. How the West was won. An epic, a landmark, both in the film, but never in the same scene. As if someone decided the screen wasn't quite big enough to hold them both at once. 1968. Fire Creek, this one is different. Jimmy, the sheriff. Fonda, the outlaw. For the first time on screen, they look directly at each other. And I've watched that film many times. There is a moment, just a moment, where you forget. They're acting where it stops being a Western and becomes something else entirely. And then, 1970, The Cheyenne Social Club. Their last film together, 2 aging cowboys. Written almost as if someone knew it would be their final chapter. I want you to find the set photographs from that. Film. Look at them between takes. When the director called cut, when the cameras stopped, their faces change. The performance leaves. And what's underneath is just 2 old friends who've been through everything together. That is the film I wish someone had made. The one between the scenes. 1982. Henry Fonda was dying, and every day, I want you to hear this, every single day, Jimmy Stewart came to the hospital. Doctors came and went. Nurses changed shifts. Family visited and returned home. Jimmy stayed every day. And here is what they talked about, because the biographers did record this part, not the illness, not the prognosis, not what comes after. They talked about 1932, that small theater in Massachusetts, the apartment in New York, the sidewalks they walked broke and anonymous before the world knew either of their names, as if at the end of everything, the only place worth returning to was the beginning. August 12, 1982, Henry Fonda passed away. He was 77 years old. Someone held a microphone to Jimmy Stewart, and that man, who had delivered some of the most beloved lines in the history of American cinema, said only this: I've been thinking about why this story matters, not just as film history, not just as biography, but as something we might actually use. Opposite in almost every way that people say matters. Different politics, different faith, different temperament. And yet, for 50 years, they chose each other not because they agreed, not because it was easy, but because somewhere along the way, they both understood something that takes most of us a lifetime to learn. The people worth keeping are not the ones who see the world the way you do. They're the ones who show up in the garage, at the hospital, in the silence, every time. And there is one last thing, something I almost didn't include, because it's almost too much to hold. Jimmy Stewart rode the same horse in 17 of his Western films. Over 22 years, the horse's name was Pie. Jimmy tried to buy Pie many times. The owner, a wrangler named Stevie Myers, never sold him. But she always made sure Pie was there whenever Jimmy needed him. 20-2 years, 17 films, the same horse. Some loyalties don't need explaining. In 1970, while filming the Cheyenne Social Club in Santa Fe, Pie fell ill. Henry Fonda watched his friend, watched Jimmy's face when he heard the news about that horse, and said nothing. Instead, in his quiet hours on set, Fonda picked up a brush. He was a gifted painter. Most people didn't know that about him, and he painted Pie Dot, a watercolor portrait, done in silence, given without ceremony. 2 days after Fonda gave Jimmy that painting, Pie passed away. Jimmy Stewart kept that watercolor in his personal library for the rest of his life. Not an Oscar, not a film reel, not a studio photograph. A painting of a horse made by his best friend in the quiet hours of their last film together. If this story moved you and you want to go deeper, I want to tell you about a book, Hank and Jim, The 50-Year Friendship of Henry Fonda and James Stewart by Scott Eyman, a New York Times bestseller. Nearly 1,000 reader reviews, and every page feels like sitting in that garage with them. It is the book this video was built on, and it deserves to be read. Every video we bring you on this channel, we research with care. We study with patience. We prepare with love, because Jimmy deserves that. And so do you. If you'd like to continue this journey with us, please subscribe, follow, and share with someone you love. And to everyone who has already joined this family, who has watched and stayed and returned from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.